So you haters out there, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, the Albanese lady from the United Nations, supposedly International Court of Justice, which is not justice. It's a hanging court made to hang Jews. Why is it that way? The answer is because it's been predicted that way from the Bible. As long as the Jews were being murdered, being attacked, we had sympathy from some of the nations. But as soon as the Jews got successful, they learned how to defend themselves, and they had the resources to defend themselves. All of a sudden, with the bad guys, October the 7th, 2023, the attack was the equivalent of the murder of 40,000 Americans, over 13 times the number of Americans who died on 9/11. And for 3,000 Americans, the United States attacked Afghanistan, which is 6,500 miles away. Most of the people had nothing to do with it. You didn't just kill Taliban and Al-Qaeda. You killed men, women, and children. Nobody bothered to collect the data of the dead men, women, and children in Afghanistan and Iran, later for ISIS in Iraq, Syria. Assad's government murdered between 500,000 and 1 million people, brutally, many by poison gas, many by direct bombing from above, many by starvation. Erdogan is killing the Kurds in the tens of thousands in northern Syria and Iraq, eastern Turkey. Nobody says a word. In Sudan, southern Sudan, the blacks are being killed by Arabs, Sudanese Arabs, Muslims, Sudanese Arabs. And the tens of thousands of casualties that have been directed by the forces to do, because they want the southern people to leave. And by creating terror, they will have them leave so that they can take over the oil resources of southern Sudan. That's what's going on. Nobody says a word. Tens of thousands of Christians are being killed all over Africa every year. I think the number is about 70,000. Where's the outrage? Where's the Pope on this? Tucker Carlson had the sister of George Stephanopoulos as a witness of Israeli evil. I mean, the only thing she could say was that Israel stopped certain accesses for people, which has been shown to be not true, but that's not the point. She should have been asked one question. How many Christians live in Bethlehem today? And how many Christians lived in Bethlehem in 1967? Why are they so few Christians living in Bethlehem. They numbered 90% of the population, and today are barely 10% of the population of Bethlehem. If Bethlehem is such an important city for Christianity, why don't the Christians defend the Christians living there? Who's been chasing them out? Who's living there and chasing them out? Not the Jews. Jews don't live in Bethlehem. They're not allowed to live there. Muslims. Muslims terrorized the Christians and chased them out of Bethlehem, the home of Christianity, the birthplace of Christianity. You got to ask yourself, Tucker, why did you ask that question? All you got was, well, for this thing they prevented, this thing they prevented. Did you ask an IDF soldier who was there why they prevented? The answer may astound you. Actually, Charlie Kirk answered the question himself before he died. Those churches in Bethlehem and in Jerusalem are part of a free-for-all between the various Christian sects. And each Christian sect wants dominion and control over those holy places and will not let the other Christian sect to be there or to have control. So they kill themselves. So all the IDF did was to make what is called a Seder, make sure that everybody had equal access. You can look it up, Tucker. It's in Charlie Kirk's, latest videos before he died. So why? Why don't you care that 90% of the people who were living in Bethlehem that were Christian all of a sudden are gone? Only 10% are left. And the other 90% living in Bethlehem are the Muslims. Why is that? The answer is they've been terrorized to get out. So why does Miss Stephanopoulos criticize the Jews? That's part of her bias, religious bias. But it doesn't reflect the truth. See, you're entitled to your opinion, but not entitled to your own facts. Very well known aphorism. Fact is, Muslims restrict Christians from going to Christian sites. Only under the Jews has there been equal access to the holy sites. Until 1967, there was no equal access. Certainly no Jews were allowed on the Temple Mount into their holy land, their holy city. I want to address Candace Owens' stupidity. It's one thing being a bigot. Tucker is a bigot. He's an anti-Jew. But he's a smart anti-Jew. He has facts, or he presents facts. But you, Candace, don't know the facts. And from ignorance shows just how stupid you are and how ignorant you are. You went to Jerusalem and you were told this is the Muslim quarter. And this bothered you that the Muslims are relegated to one neighborhood. Right? So this was the slum, right? The ghetto. What's the history of the Muslim quarter? There was no Muslim quarter till 1936. No, I repeat it, no Muslim quarter until 1936. 65% of the residents of Jerusalem were Jews. Up until 1948, by the way. What they call the Muslim quarter was the place where Jews lived until 1936. The Muslims rioted in 35 and 36, and as a reward, just like October 7th, they murdered Jews and they get a reward from the United Nations. Give you Palestine state. So a reward for murdering Jews, terrorizing Jews. The Jews were relocated. They were taken out of their homes, and the Muslims were allowed to take over their homes. And that quarter, that part of Jerusalem, where the Jews were de-Judaized, where they were thrown out, was now called the Muslim Quarter. If you go there, Candace, I'm sure you didn't bother looking. On most of the entryways to those multi-story houses, 2, 3-story buildings, and the entranceway, there's cement on the side of the door. There's a little piece of cement that is of a different color that's on a slant. You know what that used to be, Candace? That was where the mezuzah of the Jews were placed. Jew puts a mezuzah, a holy scroll, at the gateway of his or her home. Those homes all had mezuzahs. The mezuzahs were removed forcibly, and they put cement over them. Unfortunately, it's a different color cement. You can see it. It's a different color cement because the cement is newer than the old cement. So the reason why there's a so-called Muslim quarter, by the way, until 1967, no Jew was allowed to live in Jerusalem. Isn't that bigotry? Isn't that racism? No Jew was allowed to live in his holy city, the city of King David, the city where Abraham met Melchizedek. In that city, the city of our ancestors, not a single Jew was allowed to live until the Jews won the war in 1967. And instead of chasing the Muslims out of the neighborhoods that they took from the Jews stupidly let them stay there and let it be called the Muslim Quarter. Just the area where the Jews were living after 1936 till 1948, they reoccupied those lands. Where is the Jewish quarter, by the way, Candace? Do you know? I don't think you know. It's right next to a gate. It's called the dung gate, the feces gate, the gate of garbage. They made the Jews live next to the garbage dump. That's the Jewish quarter. That's our bigotry. We were relegated to a place next to the dung gate, and that's where the Jews live today. But it's not, yeah, of course it's going to be nicer. And Jews invest in their neighborhoods in Israel. Muslims are welcome to invest. They don't have money, or they have money. They got plenty of money, the Muslim world. They just don't give the money to their brethren in the West Bank. The reason for that is if they improved their lot, they'd be happy with their lives. They wouldn't be attacking Jews. So, Candace, the Muslim Quarter was where Jews lived and were thrown out from, and they took over those areas. The Jewish Quarter was near the Dung Gate. You tell me which quarter is the one that represents bigotry. That represents racism. prejudice. But you're not interested in facts. And because you're not interested in facts, you said something dumb. And you keep saying more dumb things. And you think they're smart because they sound smart to you. You implied that Charlie Kirk was killed by some statement of Bibi Netanyahu. Because you also were given the same invitation. But you didn't just receive an invitation from Bibi, you actually came to Israel. If that was a whistle, a dog whistle, to kill an American, how come you were alive? It's exactly like the gate next to the Jewish quarter, the dung gate, and your words belong in the dung gate because you're full of, you know what. I wish to tell you, and Tucker, and all the other clowns out there, the time when it was popular and successful to bash Jews is over. That time ended biblically in 1948 because the exile of the Jews spans a period of 3,600 years. They correspond to the 36 years that Jacob was in exile. Jacob was born, according to our calendar, in the year 2108. The state of Israel was reborn in the year 5708. The difference between the two numbers is 3,600 years exactly, which means that after 3,600 years in exile and different stages in the exile, the Jews are back. And there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is God Almighty. God Almighty has declared, those who bless you I shall bless, and those who curse you will be cursed. I will curse. The reason why you've lost sponsorships, lost access to major markets, just look at your content. When you disparage the Jewish people and you think you have a following because the Qatars and people like that are paying you or supporting you, allegedly, realize that it's an only temporary gain. Because God says, I will curse those who curse you, those who curse Israel. You will lose viewership. You will go into less and less markets because you started up with God's people. I wasn't the only one who said it. Charlie Kirk said it. Mike Huckabee says it today. There are people to whom the Bible means something. The Bible foretold that the exile of the Jewish people will end after 3,600 years. After that, it's a different ballgame. All the nations started up with the Jews have gone down. Russia was the most powerful country in the world in terms of its military, in terms of its dominion over other people. Look what's happened. In my time, Russia has become a second-tier power. They still have nukes, but they're a second-tier power. If they cannot defeat the Ukrainians after 2 years, losing over 1 million people to death and injury, losing multiple thousands of tanks, multiples of aerial vehicles, of airplanes and ships and things, all kinds of losses, incredible losses. And you still can't defeat the Ukrainians. You're not a number one level. Look at this. Israel knocked out an air force that was considered superior to it. Oh, now, but before, the Iranians were considered a superior military force over the Israelis. And in 72 hours, that was all done. Miss Albanese, not only you're a liar, but you're a stupid liar. You compared Israel's defensive war to Nazi Germany, exterminating a third of the Jewish people, 6 million Jews. Now, if Israel wanted to exterminate the people in Gaza, they have much more efficient ways of exterminating them. They don't need rifles. They don't need troops. They have air superiority. You can blanketly bomb the place to smithereens. They really wanted to. The answer is they don't want to. So you compared the economy, the booming economy of Israel, to the booming economy of the Nazis during World War II. It's a big difference. The Nazis confiscated other people's wealth, especially Jewish wealth. And while you're confiscating somebody else's wealth, and you haven't lost yet, your GDP goes up. But I'm telling you, there's nothing that Israel gained by attacking Gaza. It lost, it put in hundreds of billions of dollars of munition into the process. We got nothing in return. The fact that Israel's economy is booming is directly connected to that blessing from God. It don't make any sense. And Israel didn't take anything from the Gazans. There's nothing to be gained from the Gazans. If they wanted to gain something, they would have attacked the Straits, they would have attacked the Iranians and taken over their oil refineries and gotten the money that way. But they didn't do that. They didn't have to. Israel's economy is booming because God said it will be booming. In the last chapters of the 5 books of Moses, it says that Israel's economy will be booming. Got nothing to do with Gaza. Everything to do with the fact that people, one, invest in winners. Israel has the most creative, high-tech, and medical development in the world. They're number one in desalination, number one in agricultural development. They have the most fertile place on earth, next to the Napa Valley. What was it before? The Sinai Desert. The Sinai Desert is where most of Israel's produce is grown, from where they export their produce to the rest of the world. And the Sinai Desert is more productive than any other place on earth, except for the Napa Valley. How did this happen? The answer is through desalination. Israel desalinates water from the Mediterranean and brings billions of gallons of water into the Negev desert. And that area has boomed. The desert is blooming, creating food, produce for tens of millions of people, all through Israel's ingenuity. That's how the economy is booming, Miss Albanese. But you hate Israel. You hate the Jews. You hate their success. So you're blind. You will continue to lose credibility in the world, as will the International Court of Justice, as will the United Nations. The United Nations is the last place where people think that there is justice, that there is honesty. The Lubavitcher Rebbe called the United Nations a house of lies, a house of darkness, and told Bibi Netanyahu, when he was the ambassador there, to spread light. That light's being spread, and the darkness of the United Nations will end with the light of truth. But not before Tucker and Candace and all those clowns will stop being popular.